The English Derby, of course, starts this weekend. We've had the fascinating Irish Derby, and that was a tremendous competition all the way through. The final may be slightly marred by the injury to Pestana, but thankfully he's on the mend at the moment, and we wish him well for the future, and we'll see lots of little Pestanas running about. In these strange times, of course, the English Derby been put back a year. It's behind the Irish Derby now, and there's a small but very select Irish challenge coming over this time. So we're joined by Ian Fortune, the voice of Irish Greyhound racing, and a very good judge to boot as well. And I'm sure he'll run us through all the Irish dogs that are coming over, the small challenge this year to come over to try and win the English pot over at Nottingham. Afternoon, Ian.
Good afternoon, Lofty. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too, mate, you too. So again, last year, as you say, there was an invasion last year come across. The Irish had 4 finalists. They had the 1, 2, 3. You were very bullish, I seem to recall, about thinking they're going to have all 6 finalists at one stage. And we thought that might happen as well. A slightly smaller but select field this time. Graham Holland, of course, he's been no stranger to winning the Irish Derby, winning it 3 times now, I think it is. The Englishman yet to win the English Derby. He'd love to win it, I'm pretty sure. When Claire's Rocket looked the chance at Toaster a couple of years back. But he brings over, say, 6 runners this time. And New In Session is the first one of his. Was a 33-1 chance not so long ago. Now he's our anti-post at 9-1 favourite here at Star Sports.
Yeah, only for we didn't know what the story was with regards to the competition and, you know, whether we'd be able to get out of the country or not. I dare say that 33-1 wouldn't have lasted as long as it did, because this is a well-found greyhound. From early in his career, he looked a real star. Went 6 for 6 his first 6 races, has suffered 2 defeats since, but looks the real part. For me, he's the epitome of a Nottingham dog. He has enough early speed. He flies down the back and he stays well over 5. This trip, you'd imagine, should be right down his street. I can see why he's a clear favourite, and you know, even at the short enough prices, you know, I can still see people getting involved, because if you go down through them, there's not too many dogs you could see even worrying him, never mind beating him.
He certainly looks a fast dog. I looked through some of his back form, and only Claire's Rocket's been round Clonmel faster. And you watched the run when he beat Pestana just prior to lockdown, and he gave Pestana about a full length start and a beating. So, yeah, he's certainly a pacey dog.
Yeah, that run against Pestana, something happened at the second bend. I think there was a bit of bumping or something, and he got a sort of catapult into the back and found himself in front. I wouldn't take that quite at face value. This big run in Clonmel, though, is certainly worth noting that in behind them were Clara Icon, 8.5 lengths behind him, and Epic Hero, who did 29.19 in the second round of the Irish Derby. So 2 superstars in behind him, but they were 8.5 lengths behind him. That just goes to show how good he is when he hits it.
Yeah, there's certainly some form there. Maybe a blessing in disguise that he obviously got knocked out in the first round of the Irish Derby, and the fact that Graham kept him away from running him in the plate, I think, which also shows there might have been a little bit of idea of bringing him over here was up his sleeve. Moving on to Lynch and Bocco then, of course, last year's Irish Derby champion. Not look the same dog this year, I don't think, in these defence. Maybe that Irish Derby takes a lot out of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure it could be the Irish Derby from last year as much. Just has taken his while to come back to himself, and who knows, may have changed his racing style. Maybe we will never see the swashbuckling Lynch and Bocco that we saw before. I know Graham is hopeful that we will see the best of him, but he even admitted himself, he says, I don't know if we'll see the same early speed that we saw last year. He's been disappointing this year, there's no question about that. The fact that he's going to be seated inside will certainly help, because it's been his biggest problem in his few defeats this year, is that he's been stepping in from boxes and taking a bump or two and then straightening up into the corner. From the inside, if you saw his trial, he went up very straight from trap 2. And, you know, that sort of takes out a little bit of doubt in the equation. If he does hit the lids, he's going to go up straight. And the engine's still there. It's just whether Casey still has the early speed. But no, you know, purely because if he returns to his best form from last year, and there's no reason why he shouldn't, because he's still young enough, he's well found in the market. I thought, you know, even when Ice and Fire won his prime earlier this year, unfortunately he won't be there, but I thought Lynch and Bocco still deserved to be Derby favourite. But recent runs would suggest he still has a bit to prove maybe on this year's form.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough to say. Graham beats a few other dogs over. Black Parachute is amongst them. Also Wolf, who, of course, looked every inch the real deal last year when he downed to Voters Wildcat, a defending champion in the first round. And then, unfortunately, did his Bermuda Triangle moment at the third bend in the second round. And there's always been questions asked about him. I know he won the Easter Cup over at Shelbourne and won there last Saturday night on Derby night, but he's a dog with probably questions to answer as well at the moment.
It seems to be the majority of the people in the UK ask the questions, because in Ireland we have no doubt about him. He's an absolute superstar. He's approaching 4 years of age. That's my fear about him. But that moment in Nottingham last year was a complete outlier. He's never done anything before it. He never did anything since. So I'd ignore that run. I'd just put it down to one of those things. The dog just caught sight of something, obviously something out of the norm caught his eye or something like that, because as I've said, he's never shown it before or since. He was a dog that deserved to win a big one. He'd often got to the final and let himself down perhaps in the final, getting squeezed early or missing the kick or whatnot. But in the Easter Cup he did it right this year. Listen, age is against him, but at 40-1, I'm looking at the dogs ahead of him. I'd still fancy him to beat a lot of them in a one-off contest. The problem is it's the few runs and whether he can keep going at the age he is. But he showed in Derby final night in Ireland that he's every bit as good as he was. It was a very professional display from the front. And by all accounts, he's improved with every run he's had in the last 2 months. Certainly
one to keep an eye on. And say Graham's other two, Feudal Spirit, we've not touched on, Ballydor Valor.
Yeah, we actually didn't mention Black Parachute there. A real strong, powerful runner, perfectly suited to Nottingham, no question about that. Just be feared that when it gets to the really serious stuff, he lacks enough, about a yard to the corner. Feudal Spirit is a dog that's certainly progressive. He's on an upward trajectory. He's getting better all the time. Had one very impressive performance in the Derby where he beat Lynch and Bocco, amongst others. He's going the right way. He's still a few yards off being good enough to win a Derby, but there's no reason to believe that couldn't come yet. It's a stretch, but he's getting there. And the other one we mentioned, the last Graham Holland trained runner, Ballydoyle Valor, dog that disappointed me a few times, must be said, in the Derby. I went out in the limb with him, one of the rounds napping him, and he ran like an absolute hairy one. But he has improved for each run again. A better display on Saturday night in Shelbourne Park in defeat over 575 yards. He's an exceptionally fast greyhound. I thought he was good enough to win a Derby back at the start of the year, but last year his form got better and better through the year. And I wonder, is he a dog that just thrives on racing? And if he were to go a round or two without any mistakes, you'd probably find that this fellow would be getting better through the competition, whereas others might be coming back to him.
Interesting. So Pat Buckley, he's been won a Scottish Derby, of course, and he loves to have a tilt at the English Derby. He sends a squad of 4 over. Deerjet Sydney had probably been at the top of his squad. The dog could look like he desperately wanted the rails around Shelbourne Park. I think the fact there's no middle seeding, there's middle seeding over in the UK, will get drawn close to the rails and one get drawn out and trap 5. What do you make of him?
Oh, we have middle seeding in Ireland. Problem is, there's not an awful lot of them. No, if Deerjet Sydney gets to the rails, if he's in trap 1, I couldn't care less what he's up against. He's worth a few quid. And I'm genuinely, it could be any dog, because he doesn't have to focus to get into the fence. He's a good starter. He stays tight to the rails. He'll fly up to the corner, and he's very hard to pass when he's in front. I don't think he's the best of the Pat Buckley trained runners, but if you got trap 1 every night, he'd be in the final. But he is very much the draw-dependent greyhound. Of Buckley's other 2, or other 3, should I say, Glengar Bale was a dog that was really coming forward. He touched anti-post favouritism in the Irish Derby at one point, perhaps falsely. I think it was more money-led, but he's no question a very, very exciting young dog. I know the dam has a special place in your heart, Droopy Smasher. She nearly killed you. At the same time, she made your night. In Toaster a few years ago. She was an absolute head the ball. She was extremely talented, however, and thankfully she's passed on her talent and not quite her temperament to her progeny. Glengar Bale, a very fast greyhound. He's coming forward all the time. He's lightly raced. And the other one that I really like from Buckley's is Dueling Duke. And this was a dog that ran exceptionally well in the Produce Stakes. He's actually a brother to New In Session, who we've already mentioned, and a very similar type of greyhound. Plenty of pace from start to finish. He ran poorly in the opening round of the Irish Derby for Pat Buckley. That was his first run for Pat. He has since run on Derby final night. A very impressive run in, be it not quite top-class company, but there's no question if this fellow produces his best form, he could really take the Newcastle or Nottingham, and he's a dog that could certainly go a few rounds, and don't be surprised if he improves through the competition. He's one that I'd have in my shortlist, Dueling Duke. He has another one called Knockdabool Sid, a dog with a bit of early speed. At the moment, he's a few yards off it and need to find it pretty quickly to get involved.
I'll still wake up in a cold sweat with that GP Smasher race and Toaster in the last race. And
I knew that'd bring a smile to your face.
The 8 dog 6 Ben race in the last race of the night. I was like, I'm not going to win it out in one go. Tremendous stuff. John McGee brings a few over. Katunda Logan would probably be the most interesting one of his 3 that he's
in the opening round, it'll be his first run for Ginger. He's a dog that was in the past trained by Owen McKenna as a youngster. In recent times, I'd say during lockdown, Michael Byrne took him home. And listen, the Cotunda men, they're more than capable of training a greyhound. His dogs actually came out of lockdown in great form. I know that they were being well exercised during lockdown, and he carried that form on through the Irish Derby. Displayed real good early speed in a couple of the rounds to win well. The 503 meters is probably, or 500 meters is perhaps a little bit far from, but as you saw in his trial, he went fastest of all those dogs in that trial session, doing a 495, and I wouldn't rule it out him going even faster to the opening corner. Does like the inside, but not as dependent as he used to be. You know, it's the round where he draws 3 or 4 I'd be worried about with an early pacer up his inside. But no, in the opening round or two, if he was in trap 1 or trap 2, you know, keep him in mind as one to throw into accumulators, because he'll give a good account of himself. He's a really good, honest dog.
On the subject of Cotunda Logan, the dog bitch who chased him home last time, Kulavani Chick, she just popped into the betting, a sort of a late entry really. We had a few inquiries about it the other day at flashy prices, sort of 33-1 was quoted, and I watched a couple of her races and she's got some tremendous paces, bitch.
Yeah, well, anybody who's watching Racing Post coverage of the Irish Derby, Racing Post Television's coverage of the Irish Derby the other night, should I say, is no doubt how highly I rate this lady. I think she's a real powerhouse. She produced one of the performances of the entire Derby in, I'm going to say, the second round. Excuse my memory. It's been a long 6 weeks, Lofty. She led into the corner, was balked, came back again and picked up, I think she might have picked up something like New in Leicester or something like that in the closing yards. She's a real sort of powerful, strong running lady. Ballydoyle Vanna ran a big race behind her on Derby final night in Shelburne Park. She led early. He came at her and she kicked again off the final turn. She looks like a bitch that would absolutely relish the long run home in Nottingham. It's whether she has the tactical speed to turn close enough. But I can promise you, if a track was made for a bitch, it's probably Nottingham. The longer the straights, the long test home, you know, she's one that could be hard enough to keep out of the frame. She's a very talented lady.
Yeah, I think a lot of people found that last year. I mean, lots of races don't seem to change too much in the third bend at Nottingham, but lots of dogs were staying on late. Say Ballymac Tad's probably last year getting to the final. She was a prime example and finishing runner-up by the way she ran. She actually has a similar type of profile to Ballymactaz from last year, where she's not all that overly raced. She has shown a liking for 575, 600 yards. She's a bit wider though, you know, so when they are queuing up on the inside at the third bend, she should be staying around the outside, getting a run and not losing momentum. That would be the key to her challenge, because as I said, once she hits that final bend, she'll power up the home straight. That 33-1 seemed quite interesting. I think there was a
yes.
Groovy sniffing about for that. I think that will last too long. Got to mention Clara Icon, of course, Irish Derby finalist. Gary Hicks, the most sporting of owner, sent him over to Peter Harnden to be trained for the English Derby. It's a tough ask, but he just loves his racing, Gary. I know how much he loves this dog as well. And he's got to be there or thereabouts surely as well, even though on the back of a very tough campaign in the Irish Derby.
Yeah, Gary's an infectious character, really loves his dogs. You can say the same for Peter Herndon, and you know that no stone will be left unturned with Peter. He'll do everything in his power to make sure that Clara Icon's given the best opportunity through this derby. My fear with Clara Icon is the opening corner. The long run to the corner actually might suit in the sense where he'll find himself off the pace anyway, because he can be a good trapper, but he lacks early, and he does tend to stand up in the corner when he's in company. But off the second bend home, you know, there'll be very few greyhounds going faster than them, and I'm not too concerned about the few weeks racing he's had in a row, because this dog just seems to be relishing it at the moment, and he's such a strong running greyhound. Funny, when he started his career, he wasn't really getting home as well as he is now, really powering up the home straight. And in the opening 2 to 3 rounds in the Irish Derby, he was the best of them all on the unofficial clocks from the second bend home. You know, when it comes to Nottingham, you know, there's very few sterner tests from the second bend home than Nottingham. And I certainly wouldn't rule this fellow out going a few rounds. My fear is that he will get away racing some night and be probably too prominent at the opening corner, slam on the brakes, find a bit of traffic. But no, if I thought he'd just sit in behind the pace into the corner every night, it'd be very hard to keep out of the frame.
Any English dogs that take your fancy that have obviously been sent over quite recently from Ireland? There's probably a few that have come over maybe with the Derby in mind.
Listen, I'm looking at your betting lists here, and that's where I'm going at the moment. Obviously, you know, the ones that have been well found in your market, Dean Ridge Sirius. I know he's one that you won't be shouting home on Derby final night if he got that far. He's a nice, strong running greyhound. Listen, in Ireland we'd have called him a 575, 600 yard dog. He probably won't win a Derby, but of the others, like I really like the Roxholm Christoph dog. It's very hard not to be impressed with him. But if I was to back one of the English trained greyhounds, I like Gonzo. I really like him. I must. There's just something about him. Listen, he had some great form over here in Ireland before he came across, but there's something about this dog I just like.
The wide running puts me off slightly. I know Dave Clark's really keen on him.
Slightly. I would imagine with the change of traps and various things from last year that, listen, there were still one or two wide dogs there come the latter stages. Okay, maybe not so much in the final. We had a 6 inside C's, but I just think this dog is the right sort of profile, and he just seems to be chasing it into the ground, and he's a big engine, and that's what I like. I think you need a dog in Nottingham that has a big engine, but you also need, like last year I came in a bit falsely thinking you had to be, as I keep referring to him, a 575, 600 yard dog, just a dog that really powers the winning line. You also need to have the tactical speed. You need to be able to lie up handy and get around that corner. On the big night, it was Price's Blake, but the likes of Magical Bale and those were, the dogs that really came to the fore that could get around that corner in front and get to the line. And Gonzo is one of those types of dogs. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he went very, very well indeed. Of the others, listen, Bocco's Doomy is well found in your market. I don't think he's running as well as he was. That's my concern. If he was at his very best, I'd be giving him a massive chance. Of the others, it's much of muchness. Fahan Rebel has been doing fast times, but he's so lightly raced since last year. I can only imagine they've had problems with him, and I don't really rate trial form. I tend to ignore trial form. Certainly, in the week or two ahead of a derby, because there's plenty left in the tank with some of them. You saw Lynch and Bocco and New In Session doing 29.80. Well, it'd be no surprise to me if New In Session did 29.20 in 3 weeks' time. You know what I mean?
Trials for show. It's the big race of the day. Ian, been a pleasure as always to hear your thoughts and whatever. So look forward to seeing what you can't do during the Irish Derby. And again, may it be England v Ireland. Last year the Irish had the upper hand. Maybe this year we can fly the flag for England, but I do fear the worst. The Irish have got a strong hand again, even with their small squad. But Ian,
Lofty. We only sent 15. Like, what more can we do? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Listen. Don't be surprised if we still have 6 semi-finalists.
I'll come back and hold you to that, Ian, if we see you later on. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Martin. Good luck.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye.